Okay, let's go to group 2. So starting with Michael's work, here we have honey barbecue wings, the connotative and the denotative. This is looking better, Michael. Few things we want to just update and just make a few areas a bit more consistent. I would say make this guy a little bit bigger just so we can differentiate the scale from the scale that you have here with the pull quote, unless you want to pull this down a little in scale, so make this smaller a little bit, alright? That would be my only critique for these areas right here, so that they're not competing. Traditionally, we want to make the title a little bit bigger and maybe the pull quote a little smaller. I'm still thinking this still doesn't really match your area right here when you say enjoy. Just, I don't know. Those two are not vibing well right now. You might need to pull this more closer to this edge over here, but it's just too close to this edge, and it's just, I don't know. It looks like it's been pasted on. So maybe bring this over right here, right? Maybe let it align with wings, but once you move this guy over, you can align maybe a little closer to this edge. Okay? Definitely good job with your connotative. I like where this is going. This looks so much better. Little areas just here and there for feedback. The space that you have here for instructions, I would definitely recommend we use that that overall space. Well, actually, never mind. That space looks good as it is. However, with instructions, I would say we don't really read instructions this way. Let's read instructions this way. So NST and continue it that way. All right. So we want to read this way. We tend to read things that way, not really down this way. It's a little asking too much for your viewer. Okay. I would create a little bit more space over here, kind of like what you have with barbecue. Just maybe move this slightly over and maybe scale down a little bit, and you might need to scale this guy down just a tiny bit. See if that works, but you might just get away with making more space like what you've created over here. But good job, this looks good. Let's go to Jose's work. So this is the connotative and the denotative. Okay. So far looking good. I would say, however, your text is starting to become illegible here, and I think there's a lot of different movements going on. So there needs to be some kind of reasoning as to why we're creating that many movements with our text. So this is chocolate cake. I don't know, I think this needs to be simplified. I don't mind doing an effect for the title, but having an effect for every single area on the page is definitely becoming a little too much and cropping text in odd ways. So I would rethink this layout a little bit more. You're free to use the grid if those effects are not working for you, and maybe just leave the text as it is and play around with the instructions and your ingredients a little bit more. But right now, this is not really working as a layout for where it's at. So for your denotative, I'd like to see this without any of those lines right here. So remember, this is strictly text. We're not using any graphic aids whatsoever. And then this still looks like a traditional recipe card. We want to try to break out of that, so maybe play around with the placement of the title. Could probably go here or on the bottom of sorts. And we want to make sure that we are not using the whole area of the recipe card. I mean, every little inch of this corner is covered with type, so really think about white space a little bit more. I would say maybe align ingredients to this column right here. You can get away with making the text slightly smaller here, but right now there's just too much space happening in odd areas. I would love to see this just resolved in a certain way where things align properly, but we might need to shave all that text because you have a lot of text. But we need to take a look at space and how it's being used. Okay, let's move to the next. So the Mexican michelada, Christian floors. This definitely looks better. I like where it's going. Just careful with the upside down text. So maybe with party foods can read right side up. I would say the same for this area right here. I wouldn't change anything else except for these areas right here. And see if maybe these can go a little bigger so that we can read them. Or maybe it's not in bold. Maybe we can read them in a more regular weight. Because as it's going smaller, it's becoming harder to read. Okay? So just this little detail with the upside down text. Let's fix that. But I think overall this looks nice. I wouldn't change anything with this one either. I think this looks good as it is. Just careful with how close you're getting to this area, right? But overall, good job. I think you have just very minimal things to change. Let's go to Malik. So this is looking better. Again, we're trying to get rid of the traditional recipe look. So see if there's something we can do to the title. I like where you're going with this over here, just separating the two. But we definitely want to shy away from this where the recipe title is right here and ingredients and how to. That's just a very traditional look and feel, and we want to change that. So I'm wondering if there's a way we can do that. So I think your text right here is a little too large. You can definitely scale this down some. And that can free up some space. Even the space around here. Like I think this is good, but I think this is too close to the edge, and this is starting to get too close to the edge. So let's just rethink that a little bit more. I think we need to use less typefaces here. I'm not sure what's going on. I think what would help is maybe taking a look at some of the other work that's being done in class and just kind of evaluating, seeing how some people are using maybe just one typeface or just two. But I think right now instructions is in a different type of font, and the ingredients is in a different font, and then we're using this display font. I wouldn't use this font as a text font. I would probably go back to something like this. If we want to stick to two fonts, I would say just stick to these two. The ingredients is fine, instructions is fine, but let's kind of unify. If it's instructions and ingredients, let's use the same font. But I wouldn't use this as a text font. And then cheese is in a whole different font. And again, no graphic aids. We're not using any graphic aids. Same with this area here. No bars, no text lines, nothing. No kind of one of those lines or aids. We're not doing any of that. This is strictly type. I'd also recommend that you minimize your color palette. And we don't need the outline text behind there. So let's kind of simplify this. So I see that you're doing stuff in areas like that have a diagonal, but we have a diagonal here and we have one here. So let's kind of simplify the movements going on this, as well as the number of typefaces we're using. Move on to the next page. So veggie lasagna, this looks better, Celina. What I would recommend is maybe aligning to the left instead of the middle like that. And then I still would recommend that we get out of the traditional recipe layout, which is what it's starting to look like. There's something about it that might need to be rethought. Maybe the title can go in the middle or towards the end and you push things up a little more, but right now I'm just kind of missing that element of exploration. Okay? But I like where it's going. I think it has potential. So for your connotative, you definitely see this looks like a slice of lasagna. The thing is, I would say it's just something about this typeface that you've chosen is very difficult to read. And I don't know if the type, it looks like the type has been stretched, and I'm definitely not for the type being stretched. So if there's a way to use the type without stretching it, this might look a little bit better. There's something about it that's very extended and long, which is making this harder to read. But I like the shape that you're creating. So let's review your type choice, okay? And I would say this typeface as well is a little too hard to read, like bold, and it's extended, upright, a little too hard to read. So let's find something for body copy that is a little bit easier to read, okay? And let us go to the next group.